Welcome to EVTN News, your source for Catholic news. It's not it's not your all-inclusive source. I mean, come on, we're not inclusive here. And it's not your comprehensive source. I don't have time for that. And neither does anyone else in the Catholic media apparently. So I'm bringing the sources that they won't, or I'm bringing the news stories that some of them won't cover. Hot topics that are what should I say? Smoldering topics. They're too much for some of the Catholic media to touch. And the first one is blasphemy, a church run by the Paulist Fathers. You know it's going to be bad when it starts out like that. In New York, has removed a blasphemous painting series entitled God is Trans, a queer spiritual journey after the Archdiocese of New York said it would investigate reports of the display. A spokesperson for the Archdiocese of New York told the Daily Caller News Foundation that the Church of St. Paul the Apostle in Manhattan informed their office that the controversial exhibit had been removed. The church also promoted the idolatrous and heretical ideas that we can make a god according to our own liking and there is no devil. They were, moreover, sacrilegiously placed next to the church altar. Imagine that. Blasphemy in a church, and what happens? The Archdiocese of New York says, oh, take that display down. Imagine if a Catholic, like a Catholic, not a fake one, imagine if a Catholic said, even a reverent Novus Ordo, what would most bishops do? They would suspend them. But these guys, blasphemy, I mean, what does Aquinas say for... Aquinas says people should receive capital punishment for heresy. But no, they're part of the Francis Church, so they're okay. Just tell them, no, don't do that. Don't do that. People are calling in and complaining. You should take it down. And then you get a pope who insults the Latin Mass. Francis met with Hungarian Jesuits in April. Nothing good comes from that either. A Jesuit asked, it was a question and answer, a Q&A. One Jesuit asked, the Second Vatican Council talks about the relationship between the Church and the modern world. How can we reconcile the Church and the reality that is already beyond the modern? How do we find God's voice while loving our time? Simple answer, you don't. But this is Pope Francis, and so he used that as an opportunity. He's an opportunist. He used it to take a shot at Catholics. Which, I don't know, are the Jesuits Catholic? That's a rhetorical question. Anyway, his answer was, as you would expect. I'll read it to you. I wouldn't know how to answer that theoretically. Yeah, of course you wouldn't. But I certainly know that the council is still being applied. It takes a century for a council to be assimilated, they say. And I know the resistance to its decrees is terrible. There is unbelievable restorationism, which I call indietrismo, backwardness. As the letter to the Hebrews says, we do not belong to those who shrink back. Ooh, but there are plenty of St. Paul's writings that talks about holding fast to the traditions, but let's ignore those. Let's ignore St. Paul's comments on sacrilege and sodomy and everything. Anyway, he says the flow of history and grace goes from the roots upward like a sap of a tree that bears fruit, but without this flow you remain a mummy. Going backwards does not preserve life ever. You must change, as St. Vincent of Lérins wrote in his commentary, when he remarked that even the dogma of the Christian religion progresses, consolidating over the years, developing with time, deepening with age. But this is a change from the bottom up. I agree. The danger today is inditrismo, the reaction against the modern. It is a nostalgic disease. He's telling us that we're infected with a nostalgic disease. He said, this is why I decided that now the permission to celebrate according to the Roman Missal of 1962 is mandatory for all newly consecrated priests. And you wonder why there's a vocation crisis. After all the necessary consultations, I decided this because I saw the good pastoral measures put in place by John Paul II and Benedict XVI were being used in an ideological way to go backwards. It is necessary to stop this inditrismo, which was not the pastoral vision of my predecessors. And so, the magisterium, Francis is the magisterium. Everything he says is Catholic doctrine. Everything before him is not. Right? That's what the modernists will tell you. And so then, once we get a Catholic Pope, it could be a long time, but hopefully it's soon. If we get a Catholic Pope, then what are the modernists going to say? They're going to resist him. So there you go. I generally tend to ignore Pope Francis, but this was particularly spiteful and rigid, really. I mean, he rails against rigidity every day, multiple times. But is he taking a look in the mirror? Because they're Catholics. And those Catholics attend the Latin Mass. By banning Catholicism, what are you accomplishing? The state of Wisconsin's Labor Division has ruled that Catholic Charities is not eligible for a religious exemption from contributing to the state's unemployment insurance system because it offers its services free of proselytizing, regardless of the client's religious background. As a result, which means basically they're saying it's not a religious organization, and so it doesn't qualify for tax exemption as a religious organization because it's not a religious organization, because it doesn't do religious stuff. That's what Wisconsin's Labor Division is saying. As a result, Wisconsin's Labor and Industry Review Commission determined it was essentially a secular organization not operated for primarily religious purposes. This is a critical case, well, according to this article, this is a critical case for Catholic Charities, which receives extensive government funding for immigration services. So whenever you're taking your mission and you're combining, you're receiving government money, and then your mission has become so watered down that you've become something completely different, that's a problem. Wisconsin is not the only government organization, or no, Wisconsin is not the only state government challenging Catholic Charities. Texas is bearing down on groups it suspects may be aiding illegal border crossings. Similarly, 4 Republican members of Congress accused Catholic Charities USA of supporting illegal border crossings, threatening an investigation. Catholic Charities USA, I did an investigation. I believe it was 2018. I believe the numbers were from 2018. They received, from what I could see, and I only was able to find financials for less than half of Catholic Charities USA. In my own personal research, I found that they received over $2.3 billion from the U.S. government in 2018, and that's not even half of them. That's not even half of the Catholic Charities organizations in the United States. So it could be double that. It could be $5 billion. And Catholic Charities is divided, I don't know, maybe for that exact purpose, so that it doesn't look so bad. But when you combine the numbers, it's all bad. They're receiving government funding, and mostly for immigration. So no wonder Wisconsin wants them to pay taxes, because they're not doing Catholic work. They're doing secular work that any government-funded organization could do. So they're essentially, at this point, a contractor of the government, which makes you more inclined to de-emphasize the egregious anti-Catholic views of politicians, especially since one political party favors immigration and they also favor anti-Catholic things. I've heard that it's happened with bishops across the United States, how they de-emphasize certain things in exchange for favorable treatment from Democrat politicians. Can't tell you if it's true. Haven't heard it from the bishop's mouth, but I've heard it from sources which I believe are credible. But I don't know. Ask your bishop. Francis held a May 11th prayer with the Coptic Pope Tawadros in the Vatican. He announced that 21 Copts beheaded in 2015 in Libya by ISIS would henceforth be included in the Roman martyrology as Catholic saints. Francis admitted that the Tawadros Copts are not part of Christ's church, as he expressed his hope that the day is drawing near when we will be one in Christ. Copts are monophysites who claim in their prayers that Christ had only one nature, whereas in reality Christ unites in himself both the divine and human nature. So he's including non-Catholics that were killed as martyrs, which, I mean, please, can we get Catholicism? I mean, really? Seriously. Can we get the Catholic faith? I mean, if it wasn't like every single day there's nonsense and insanity and I don't know. I'm trying to find an article. Here we go. Okay, so this was from a Crux article. John Paul II, in the year 2000, staged an ecumenical liturgy at Rome's Colosseum dedicated to new martyrs, including non-Catholics such as Martin Luther King Jr. Did you know that? That was from Crux. All right, in the United States. So, I'm going to sports. If you're not a sports fan, this isn't a long discussion here. Former Washington State University football coach Nick Rolovich was in a Spokane courtroom last Thursday asking a federal judge to allow his case to continue against the university, his former employer, for firing him after his refusal to get the jab. He refused to get the jab and they fired him. I think his team was doing pretty well at that point too, so it was clearly a political decision. Seated behind him was former Gonzaga University and Utah Jazz star John Stockton, who lost his season tickets to his alma mater of Gonzaga? Yeah, well, it just said that. Gonzaga basketball tickets for refusing to comply with the jab requirements. I believe he didn't want to wear something over his face either, but I'm not entirely sure about that, but I think Stockton is Catholic. And also seated behind him, this is the most notable part of the article, also seated behind him was Spokane Bishop Thomas Daly. So, that's great. Bishop Daly supporting a virus hero. So, I hope he wins big in court. I hope the university pays up for stupidity. Really, I mean, that's what it is. All right, the big news, probably the reason why most of you tuned in today. Taylor Marshall announced he's running for president of the United States. What? Michael Lofton's going to have a field day. He's going to do every day 3-hour live streams. I mean, Michael Lofton all of a sudden became a political commentator. He's going to do 3-hour live streams every single day for why Taylor Marshall shouldn't be president. There you go. Why Taylor Marshall's wrong about marriage. Really? I mean, I don't know if Michael Laughlin agreed, but Laughlin has made a big name for himself by criticizing every little detail that Taylor Marshall says on his live stream. So there you go. And I don't know. And I don't really know. I'm not sure. He just announced it. I just wonder if he's trying, views are kind of declining. I haven't done the study. I wonder if he's trying to get more clicks. I don't know. That's a good question. But it seems like he's indicated he wants to run on a third-party platform. So he'd have to, found that third party. So he'd have to create the third party. And then he wouldn't be on anyone's ballot. It would just be write-in. So I'm not really sure. Of course, I'm sure he'd be a much better president than anyone we've ever had. But I don't know. You don't really want to throw your name into the fire that much, especially, how they insult your family and just, the creepers and basically nutcases out there. You don't want to subject yourself to that. I'm fairly insulated on this YouTube channel. I don't get a lot of views, and that's fine. I don't really need the fame. I mean, yeah, it would be nice to retire early, though. But anyway, according to a report from the Italian blog Messa and Latino, Archbishop Bruno Forte of the Archdiocese of Chieti Vasto, Italy, has instructed his priests not to distribute communion on the tongue or place holy water in the fonts of churches. So a few years ago, I was ranting about these faithless bishops who were so obsessed with the virus. They were part of the virus church, and this is a committed virus bishop, but he's also a heretic and needs to resign. I haven't called for bishops to resign for a while. It's about time. This is particularly terrible. The news outlet reported that in a statement on April 20th, just recently, 2023, signed by the Episcopal Vicar for Religious and Referent of the Priestly Area, Liturgy and Sacraments of the Archdiocese of Chieti Vasto, he sent to priests by message on the mobile phone. It was stated that in an update to the current virus regulations, the Archbishop considers it appropriate that due to the current situation, the following practices continue to be maintained in our Archdiocese. Eucharistic communion is to be distributed exclusively on the hands, and do not place holy water in the holy water fonts. You know who doesn't like holy water? Demons. You know who doesn't like communion in the tongue? Anti-Catholics. All right. This bishop is not Catholic, and he must be resisted. And if anyone, no one here from Italy watches this, but you should definitely give him a courtesy call and say, by the way, you're not Catholic. Please resign. You're just wasting everyone's money. Your salary you shouldn't receive any salary if you're not going to do your job. All right. In Beaumont, California, Bishop Rojas said their first Earth Day Mass. So we're going from one anti-Catholic to another. In an acknowledgement of the Catholic Native American spirituality of Saint Kateri Tekakwitha, who articulated a deep reverence for the elements of creation. Oh, this is from their article. I don't think she articulated a deep reverence for the elements of creation. I think she articulated a deep reverence for the Catholic faith. There's a difference. I don't worship trees. I don't worship Pachamama. Maybe some people do, and that's why they're called pagans and heretics. Anyway, youth from the parish presented the prayer of the four directions before the start of the Earth Day Mass. Each carried a symbol representing an element of creation, including water, wind, trees, animals, fish, birds, Mother Earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the Holy Spirit. Wow. That's awful. As the attendees left the church after Mass, they were given a packet of flower seeds and a card with 10 tips to reduce their carbon footprint, symbolizing the ecological themes of the day. Wow, are we at some pagan gathering? It doesn't sound Catholic. But at least they're broadcasting it online so everyone can see this nonsense. How much longer till we get a Catholic Pope? Tell me when it's over, really. All right, so Bishop Strickland caused a lot of controversy, and wait until I read the last tweet because don't get fired up. Don't get all bent out of shape over the first things that he says until you hear the whole thing, because he didn't fully understand certain topics, and we'll see here in a little bit. So I actually don't have the first tweet, but he did tweet that Patrick Coffin has challenged the authenticity of Pope Francis, and he doesn't want to be associated with him. Strickland said basically Strickland called out Patrick Coffin for his Novus Ordo Sedevacantis position, which is a terrible place to be. I mean, come on. There's no pope. There's no hope of ever having a pope elected, like a valid pope elected, because most of the cardinals are now Francis cardinals. And you're stuck with the Novus Ordo. The SSPX is schismatic. And so you're stuck with the Novus Ordo with no pope. What a terrible spot to be. I mean, I don't envy Patrick Coffin whatsoever. That's not... if you're going to be a Sedevacanist, at least go to the Latin Mass. I mean, come on. But Novus Ordo Sedevacantis is the absolute worst place you could be. I mean, come on. You got to come up with something better than that. Bishop Strickland said, please allow me to clarify regarding Patrick Coffin. His quote, Patrick Coffin has challenged the authenticity of Pope Francis. He said, if this is accurate, I disagree. I believe Pope Francis is the Pope, but it is time for me to say that I reject his program of undermining the deposit of faith. Follow Jesus. So basically, he's encouraging people to disregard the errors of Pope Francis and instead follow Jesus. That's what we're called to do, so thank you for that. After that, he said, in these troubling times with so much confusion, even from Rome, it is critical to remain in the church. Schismatic movements like the SSPX or Sedevacantists, however well intended, are an injury to the body of Christ. We must fight for total unity, not just aspects of Catholicism. And I'm not going to comment on that yet because there's a follow-up tweet where he said, as a correction, as Bishop Schneider has stated, the SSPX is not in schism. The SSPX continues to hold tradition out for the Universal Church. The Eucharist of the SSPX is held as valid by the Catholic Church. We must turn to Jesus' Eucharistic face. So he clarified, and he corrected himself publicly on Twitter, and guess what? That's a sign of humility. He said something incorrect, and he corrected himself. There you go. That's what you want from a bishop. You know, I think in the future he will be more cautious before he tweets things that maybe he doesn't have a full understanding of. So a lot of people were notably upset on Twitter, and guess what? If Twitter makes you upset, you know what you need to do? Get off of Twitter. That's what you need to do. But it's good that he clarified, and he's standing with Bishop Schneider, and that's why I still have hope for Bishop Strickland. I don't know if he will be on our side if masses are banned, if the Latin masses are banned. I don't know if it's coming or not. I think, I don't know. I don't really know. No one knows. But That's just how it is. And he said something, and that should be a lesson for each of us. You know, if we make an error, then apologize and correct it and move on. All right, the embattled bishop, Rick Sticka, will be asked by Vatican officials to resign as Bishop of Knoxville after more than 2 years of scandal over the bishop's leadership of his Eastern Tennessee diocese. Sticka is accused of protecting a seminarian accused multiple times of sexual assault. Sticka last year admitted to the pillar that he interfered with a diocesan review board investigation into the allegation that the seminarian raped a parish organist, telling the pillar that the seminarian was the victim of the alleged assault, not the aggressor. Sticka also called Taylor Marshall a nut, and so here we are full circle. Right? I mean, Taylor Marshall's running for president, and Sticka's stuck. Sticka's stuck. Kind of did it to himself. The problem is there's not a lot of Catholics in the Knoxville area, and I mean, I don't know. Sticka has said things online that he's basically tried to antagonize trads and the modernists. He's tried to antagonize everyone so he could say, "Oh, I'm in the middle. I'm picking the middle ground." Great. No, not really. The middle ground, as we know with Bishop Barron, he said, "Oh, both sides disagree with me." Well, that doesn't make you right. That doesn't mean you're right. That just means that both sides disagree with you. Of course, one side's correct, the other side's not. That's obvious. And you guys know what that is. Let's get to the comments here. Oh, I didn't see these comments coming through. Please comment on Dr. J. Rohrbach Morse refusing to attend Patrick Coffin's event because E. Michael Jones would also be there. I wouldn't attend Patrick Coffin's event, I'll tell you that. But if you won't attend because E. Michael Jones, I don't agree with him on everything either. He thinks the SSPX are in schism, which clearly, I mean, you don't need a doctorate to realize that's false. You don't need a doctorate degree in anything to realize that's false. Clearly evil. Clearly not true. So E. Michael Jones has railed against the SSPX, and he was talking about Irish Catholics. You need to stay in your parishes and not go into schism. And it's like, no, they just want the Catholic faith. And if these beautiful churches are sold, guess who's going to buy them? The SSPX. And if they won't sell the SSPX, they'll sell them to the Mohammedans, and the Mohammedans will turn them into mosques. There you go. You get what you ask for. The university tried to fire my wife from her job, but we successfully bluffed them. Over the jab. Marshall should have run for school board or Congress first. So he needs to bury his position. Coffin. Patrick Coffin. Oh, he needs to get a real job. I hate to say it. I mean, have you seen his website? Yeah. I mean, I knew it was coming for Coffin. He's his own magisterium. That's what I have to say for that. Not just the Novus Ordo Sedevacantis position. I mean, it's a horrible place to be, like I said. But how is Patrick Coffin not mostly awesome? Oh my goodness. Have you seen him on Twitter? I mean, he'll insult anyone who doesn't worship him. It's bad. It's really bad. I mean, he's his own magisterium, and he's a Novus Ordo Sedevacantis. So you can't go to the SSPX, but Francis isn't Pope. And if you think Francis is Pope, then I don't know. Are you outside the church if you think Francis is Pope? Are you outside of Patrick Coffin's magisterium if you think Francis is Pope? But then you can pay him for spiritual direction. If you pay him is it $100 a month? Every quarter you'll be able to have a Zoom call with him and he'll give you spiritual direction. You can't just go to a priest for free. So that's one of the many problems I have with Patrick Coffin. But anyway, feel free to go to his Coffin Nation website. You don't even have to be Catholic to be part of Coffin Nation. You can anyone can financially support him no matter what religion. It's not just for Catholics. Twitter has blocked me from joining for years. All the better. Clarify, Dr. Morse is only offended by EMG's Michael Jones' views on the Jays, right? On SSPX. Yeah. Well, you don't want those people. I mean, look, if they're offended by Michael Jones and his views on the Jays, you know what I'm talking about, then you don't want to be part of, like, you don't want them to be part of your event. But again, I wouldn't be part of Patrick Coffin's. I mean, not that anyone would invite me to any conferences or anything like that. I'm a random nobody on YouTube, but I wouldn't want to go to one of those things. I mean, I wouldn't want to go to that. I've only seen Coffin Rag on... No. Coffin Rag's on Catholics too, not just modernists. Go on Twitter, seriously, take a look. It's bad. It's really bad. He's really out of line with a lot of the comments that he says on Twitter. Just, I know Coffin hosted a conference called Faith Over Fear. It was streamed like 2 years ago. Yeah. I mean, if you're looking for commentators, I don't know, go with someone who's traditional. I don't know. Yeah. Believe me, I'm serious. Like, I don't know. I just get a vibe from Coffin. I just get there's a vibe I get that he's his own magisterium, kind of like Boris. Twitter encourages terrible behavior, and it brings out the worst in Coffin and Boris. And at one point, Taylor Marshall spends a lot of time on there. Skojek quit the faith. Was it because of Twitter? I don't know. Maybe. What is your justification for not treating paranoid? I don't know. I don't know what that question is. Living purgatory. Okay. All right. So that's all I have today on EVTN News. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, we are the laity. We will not be silent.